Shana Tova. So, on January 18th, 1915, the English writer Virginia Woolf wrote in her own personal diary the following thought, and I'm quoting from her. "The future is dark, which is on the whole the best thing the future can be, I think." That's the quote. Now, tell me the truth. Isn't this the type of uplifting thoughts that you are eager to hear when you come to Shul on Rosh Hashanah? It's like, the future is dark, and that's the best thing ever. Awesome. So great. Now let me tell you something else. With time, I came to realize that Woolf was probably right. And today, I will try to explain that to you. So here we go. But before I begin, I have to be honest with you. It took me a while to understand what Woolf was trying to teach us. At first, I just read her phrase as some sort of an ironic comment from someone who wasn't having such a great time. By 1915, the world was already in the midst of the First World War, and Woolf herself was already struggling with some of the mental health issues that continued to torment her for the rest of her life. Perhaps, I thought at first, she was trying to be funny in a very weird way, like by using that type of British humor that I actually don't get. So maybe that was an option. Anyway, at the end of the day, I thought that she was trying to say that we are all doomed one way or another. Yeehaw! So when I read that thought for the first time, my first immediate association was to Genesis 21, the chapter from the Torah that we get to read we got to read yesterday, during the first day of Rosh Hashanah. If you remember a little bit of the story, Abraham sends Agar and Ishmael away, and then when they are walking through the wilderness, they are left with no water to drink. So Agar is so certain of what's going to happen to her son, that she doesn't want to see it. So she puts her son far away from where she is, and then she closes her eyes. Think about this. She prefers the darkness of not seeing to the darkness of what she thinks is about to happen. Agar's future seems so gloomy, so dark, that she finally gives up and cries for quite some time. So as I think about this biblical story, I kind of understand why the rabbis decided that we should read this story on every Rosh Hashanah. We have all been in Agar's shoes. We have all felt as if our world was at the brink of collapse. We have all struggled with the uneasy feelings that come with the realization that at times the future doesn't seem to be such a pretty place to visit. Who could blame us if, especially in our days, we do exactly as Agar did, shutting our eyes and crying sad tears of hopelessness and despair? Who could blame us? You know what? There are so many reasons to be worried in our days. Take, for example, what's going on with global warming and climate change. According to a report released only a couple of weeks ago, human activity is changing the planet's climate in unprecedented ways. So by doing that, we are exposing ourselves and our children and our grandchildren to more heat waves, to more droughts, and also to the type of flash floods that took the lives of more than 20 people here in Middle Tennessee less than 2 weeks ago. Or if you prefer, let's talk for a minute about the toll that this pandemic is taking on all of us. Let's talk about the stress that it has created and about all the fears that we have developed over the last year and a half. We are under so much pressure that it really looks like we are living through days in which it never rains, but it pours. What happened in Israel this past year also worries me a lot. Only a few months ago, on May of 2021, as you may remember, Israel had to endure one of its most challenging times, at least since I've been following what's going on there. Because on top of the rockets falling from Gaza, Israelis came as close as ever to the brink of a civil war. It was painful to see how the growing mistrust between Arabs and Jews brought mutual lynches, arrestments, and torching of holy sites within Israel and among citizens of the very same country. It was very painful to watch. And yet, for me, the most heartbreaking moment of all happened when I heard young American Jews coming to the conclusion that the only way to solve the conflict in the Middle East is by pushing for the unequivocal destruction of the state of Israel. And then I said, how can it be? When did we move away from advocating in favor of the two-state solution to the mistaken realization that the state of Israel doesn't have the right to exist? It is both mind-blowing and certainly a reason to be worried. Because if thinking about a future without Israel is terrifying, a future with a growing number of American Jews lobbying for the disappearance of the state of Israel is a nightmare, plain and simple. But our worries, unfortunately, do not end in the Middle East. And you know it. Here at home, we continue to witness the ongoing, seemingly never-ending polarization between different groups. For many Americans, identity politics have become their new religion, up to the point that they can't have any nuanced conversation with folks on the other side of the aisle. In that toxic environment, we risk developing a type of blindness that our sages already have associated with the 9th plague that hit Egypt back in the times of Moses. If you remember, that plague, the 9th plague, was the plague of darkness. According to the Torah, the darkness that fell upon Egypt was so thick that it could be touched. Commenting on these biblical verses, the Hasidic master, Reb Hanoch of Alexander, explains that this darkness was the physical manifestation of their complete lack of empathy for one another. So, since they were not able to see each other, and since they didn't care for one another, and they were not attuned to the pain felt by the other, a heavy darkness ended up surrounding all of those Egyptians. And that was the plague. As I was thinking about these ideas, I remember that Professor Adam Grant mentions in his last book that upon returning from space, astronauts are less focused on individual achievements and personal happiness, and they are more concerned about the collective good. So in other words, as he says, when you get to see an overview of the Earth from outer space, you realize that you share a common identity with all human beings. And then it occurred to me, perhaps here's the solution to all our problems. Let's grab a spaceship and let's go to the outer space together. It might change the way in which we see our troubles, understand our disparities, and deal with our disagreements. And if stacking all of us into one huge spaceship is not currently an option, then maybe we can still try to develop a bit of the astronaut's perspective anyway. And then we may be able to realize that the challenges that we are all facing are way bigger than any of the differences that we may have. Finally, one last reason to worry is related to the state of American Judaism in 2021. According to the Pew study that was also published a few months ago, anti-Semitism is on the rise, assimilation is on the rise, the number of unaffiliated Jews is on the rise. How can we not be worried about the future of institutionalized Judaism in America? And yet, and here, spoiler alert, this is the moment in which this sermon begins to change and the tide goes somewhere else. Even when American Judaism faces unprecedented challenges, we don't have to do anything other than open our eyes to witness a different reality. Here I am in Nashville, Tennessee, serving a growing conservative congregation that has folks from different ages and walks of life, all of us coming together because we are proud of our particular identities, and we are all looking for ways and opportunities to strengthen who we are as American Jews. Here we are, all together, whether in person or over YouTube, in this brand new main sanctuary and social hall that is a testament to the kindness of so many people who stepped up to the plate, allowing us to embark in the most ambitious and successful capital campaign that this congregation has ever seen. So at this point, let me say thank you, thank you, thank you. It is thanks to you that here we are, realizing that the future is never set in stone and that wonderful things can happen when we understand that generosity is always at the root of our growth. It is in that spirit that we actually have good reasons to believe that these congregations' best years are yet to come. So at this point, let me circle back to Virginia Woolf and her thoughts about our dark future and why that might be the best thing that the future can be for us. After some consideration, I no longer think that Woolf was being sarcastic or deeply pessimistic. On the contrary, I think that she was opening the door for us to what might happen if we dare to hope. Now, I owe this insight to the writings of Rebecca Solnit. According to this feminist author, we tend to equate dark with doom, but that is our mistake. So when Woolf spoke about the dark future, she wasn't equating dark with doom, but with mysterious and unknown. If so, then the future is dark because the future is uncertain. because the future is open, and because the future may depend, at least up to a certain point, on what we decide to do with it today. And that, as Wolf reminded us, is actually the best thing that the future can actually be. Now, none of this takes away from the troubling scenarios that we talked about before. But you know what? It gives us a fair shot at changing those trajectories for the better. And for that, we need to hope. But that hope, as Rebecca Solnit describes it, is not blind, and it is not a passive hope. The only type of hope that can help us get through life, Solnit writes, is like an axe that you use to break down doors with in an emergency. Why? Because hope should shove you out the door. Because it will take everything you have to steer the future away from endless war, from the annihilation of the earth's treasures, and the grinding down of the poor and the marginal. Hope just means that another world might be possible, not promised, not guaranteed. Hope calls for action because action is impossible without hope. So today, on Rosh Hashanah, as we begin a new year, we are called to renew our commitment to action and to hope. Today we are summoned to develop what the philosopher Hans Jonas called in his day an ethics for the future. By that, he meant the moral responsibility that we have as we take into consideration the welfare of those who, without being consulted, will later be affected by what we are doing now. Paraphrasing something that the late Rabbi Marshall Mayer used to say, today we are here to decide what our tomorrow will look like as it becomes the next generation's yesterday. Today we are reminded that our actions matter and that we will make a difference not only in our world, but in the world that we will leave for our children and grandchildren as well. So today, as we prepare ourselves to hear once again the sound of the shofar during Musaf, if you pay attention, after all of those tekiyot, after all those blasts, we will read a prayer that says, Ayom Arat Olam. Now, in Hebrew, Ayom Arat Olam could be translated as today the world is being created, but also as today the world is pregnant. And it might be that both ideas complement each other. Today, we are once again creating the world anew in partnership with God, and today and every day, the world carries with it the seeds of what it can become, if we just dare to make it happen. So it is a future that in its mysterious darkness can be bright and auspicious as well. A future that can bring blessings for all of us, and a future that will be worthy of our most wonderful dreams and aspirations. Today, on Rosh Hashanah, we remember that we have a say in shaping our tomorrow, because as the French author Antoine de Saint-Exupéry once wrote, as for the future, it is not about predicting it, but about making it possible. That is our mission, and that is our goal. So as this new year is underway, may we all commit to be a force for goodness in this world. As we continue walking together, may we all find the strength to bring light to those around us. And as the many challenges that surround our lives continue to appear, may God give us the resilience that we need to believe in our unwavering ability to change the future for the better. May God bless you all with a healthy and meaningful and inspired year. And let's say Shana Tova. We will